Let's talk about something that quietly dictates the direction of too many lives, the need for approval. It's subtle. It hides behind the choices we make, the risks we don't take, and the dreams we put on hold. And it begins early. From childhood, we're trained to seek validation. Gold stars, good grades likes applause. But at what cost? Imagine for a moment if your decisions, big and small, were no longer shaped by the invisible opinions of others. What kind of work would you do? What kind of person would you become? What would you finally say out loud? The truth is, worrying about what others think is one of the biggest barriers to authenticity, growth, and contribution. This obsession with perception is not rooted in truth. It's rooted in fear. Fear of judgment, fear of exclusion, fear of being seen and not accepted. And the irony is, most of the time, people aren't even thinking about us. They're too busy worrying about what we think of them. We create imaginary critics and let them write the script of our lives. So what can we do? First, we need to understand the why. Why do we crave this approval? At the heart of it is a need for belonging. That's normal. We're social beings. But belonging doesn't mean shrinking yourself to fit into someone else's mold. True belonging happens when you show up as your whole self and still feel connected, not when you're wearing a mask. Second, we need to build the muscle of self-trust. Most people don't actually trust their own voice. They've spent so long outsourcing their worth that they forget how to validate themselves. And here's the thing, confidence isn't the absence of self-doubt. It's the decision to move forward anyway, even when others don't get it. The people who make the biggest difference in the world are not the ones who tried to please everyone. They're the ones who knew who they were and chose to act in alignment with it, even if it made others uncomfortable. They understand this fundamental truth: when you try to be liked by everyone, you lose the clarity of who you are. You can't innovate and stay safe. You can't lead and avoid criticism. You can't grow and stay comfortable. And you certainly can't make a meaningful contribution to the world if your primary goal is to avoid being misunderstood. Greatness often looks strange before it looks obvious. People will call you crazy before they call you brilliant. So instead of asking, will they like this? Ask, does this align with my values? Instead of asking, what will they think of me? Ask, am I proud of the decision I'm making? That shift from external to internal referencing is how you begin to reclaim your power. One more thing, you will be judged. That's inevitable. But you get to choose who gets a seat at your table. Not every voice deserves your attention. Reserve your energy for the people who challenge you to grow, who tell you the truth, and who love you enough to support you even when they don't fully understand you. The world needs more people who are courageous enough to be real. And that starts with you. You don't have to be loud or bold or fearless, but you do have to be honest. Honest about what you care about. Honest about what you stand for. Honest about what matters more than applause. The day you stop worrying about what others think is the day you start becoming who you really are. That's when your life begins to matter. Not just to the world, but to you. 5 key wautas Ephraim TSPH. Most people aren't thinking about you. They're thinking about what you think of them. Let go of imagined judgment. True belonging comes not from fitting in, but from showing up as your authentic self and still feeling connected. Self-trust must be developed. Confidence grows when you honor your values, not when you chase validation. Innovation, leadership, and growth always come with discomfort and criticism. Avoidance of judgment limits your impact. Only let the voices in that challenge you with love and support. Not every opinion deserves your attention. We spend an enormous part of our lives trying to manage how others see us. Whether it's through the way we dress, the way we speak, what we post online, or the careers we choose, many of our decisions are not always our own. They are filtered through a lens of anticipated judgment. But the truth, the uncomfortable and liberating truth, is that most people are not thinking about you as much as you believe. In fact, most people are too preoccupied with themselves to scrutinize your every move. They are caught in the same cycle you are, wondering how they are perceived, second-guessing their choices, and crafting their lives to appear a certain way. We all live in our own heads, creating stories about how others might view us without realizing they are doing the exact same thing. The mind is a storyteller. It fills in the gaps of silence with assumptions. You walk into a room and someone glances your way and immediately your brain says, they're judging me. You give a presentation and one person looks down at their phone and your mind interprets it as disinterest or disapproval. You post something meaningful on social media and check for likes and comments, not because you need them, but because you think they reflect how others value you. These reactions are not facts. They're projections, stories written by fear, not by reality. Most people aren't watching you. They're busy dealing with their own insecurities, doubts, and distractions. They're trying to figure out how to be accepted, how to belong, how to be seen. And this realization can be incredibly freeing. If people are too focused on themselves to obsess over your every move, then you're not under the microscope you think you are. You can let go of the pressure to perform and instead begin to live. When we believe we're constantly being evaluated, we adjust ourselves, often unconsciously, to meet the imagined expectations of others. We soften our opinions, we hide our weirdness, we downplay our achievements. But this watered-down version of ourselves might earn temporary approval, yet it comes at a permanent cost, the erosion of who we really are. When you operate from fear of judgment, You end up living for everyone but yourself. You shrink and you call it politeness. You settle and you call it being realistic. You pretend and you call it professionalism. But deep down, you feel the disconnect between the life you live and the one that calls to you. This is not just about confidence. It's about clarity. You need to see clearly how little power other people's opinions actually have over you unless you give it to them. We give people power over our emotions, our choices, our futures, and they don't even know it. You let a stranger's offhand comment haunt you for days. You let a family member's disapproval paralyze you. You let your peers' imagined opinions steer your career. But what if you paused and reminded yourself, they're not thinking about me. They're thinking about themselves. They're carrying their own fears and insecurities. Their opinions are not always a reflection of truth, but a mirror of their own experiences. When you accept that people are not as focused on you as you fear, you start to reclaim your time, your thoughts, and your energy. You stop replaying conversations, dissecting your actions, and trying to fix something that probably wasn't broken. You begin to show up more freely. You speak more honestly. You take more risks. You stop asking, will they approve? And start asking, is this true for me? And with each step, you build a deeper relationship with yourself. Relationship not built on validation, but on self-respect. Of course, this doesn't mean you stop caring about others. It means you stop giving strangers, critics, and even well-meaning loved ones the authority to shape your sense of worth. Their opinions may be loud, but they don't have to be final. You can listen, learn, and still choose your own path. You can care about people without needing their constant approval. And that's where real strength lies, not in being impervious to judgment, but in refusing to let it govern your life. The truth is, people are not thinking about you nearly as much as you think. And that truth should not make you feel small. It should make you feel free. Because when the imagined spotlight fades, all that's left is you. And that is where your real life begins. True belonging is one of the most powerful and fundamental human needs. We all want to feel accepted, understood, and seen. But somewhere along the way, we began confusing belonging with fitting in. And they are not the same thing. Fitting in is about adjusting who you are so you can be accepted by the group. Belonging is about showing up as who you are and still being embraced. The difference may seem small, but it changes everything. One is about performance, the other is about connection. One is about masks, the other is about truth. And when you live your life constantly trying to fit in, you begin to chip away at your identity piece by piece. When people try to fit in, they monitor themselves constantly. They edit what they say, how they say it, and who they say it to. They suppress parts of their personality that feel too bold, too quiet, too strange, too emotional, too intense, because they believe those parts might not be welcome. But with every compromise of identity, they move further from who they really are. They become a version of themselves crafted to meet expectations, to win approval, and to avoid rejection. And ironically, in doing so, they lose the very thing that could lead to real connection, their authenticity. Real belonging doesn't require you to be perfect. It requires you to be honest, to be willing to show up even when you're unsure, to say what you believe even if it's unpopular, to be vulnerable without guarantees. This is not easy. It takes courage to stop performing and start being real. It takes strength to risk judgment for the sake of truth. But only when you take that risk can you find the people who actually belong with you. The people who don't love your mask, but love your essence. And those relationships are the ones that matter, because they are not built on convenience or conformity, they are built on truth. People spend years trying to fit in with others who don't really know them. They laugh at jokes they don't find funny. They nod along with opinions they don't agree with. They accept behavior they find hurtful. They say yes when they want to say no, all in the name of belonging. But what they're really doing is trading self-respect for temporary comfort. The cost is high. Over time, they begin to forget what they value, what they enjoy, what they believe in. They silence their intuition. They numb their needs. They lose their sense of direction because you cannot stay connected to yourself while constantly seeking permission to be who you are. The truth is, real belonging only begins when you stop abandoning yourself. It begins the moment you decide that your truth matters more than being liked. It begins when you accept that not everyone will understand you. And that's okay. You weren't born to be everyone's favorite. You were born to be yourself. And the more you honor that, the more you will attract the people who are meant to walk with you. The people who celebrate your strengths and hold space for your struggles. The ones who don't need you to shrink, censor, or prove yourself. These people don't come easily. They come as a result of living truthfully, and they are worth the wait. It's important to understand that the desire to belong is not weakness. It's human. We all want to feel seen and accepted. But when we confuse belonging with approval, we fall into the trap of constant self-monitoring. We build relationships that are based on image, not intimacy. And the moment we change or grow, those relationships become fragile because they were never grounded in who we really were. They were grounded in who we pretended to be. You don't need to convince anyone to accept you. You don't need to twist yourself into a version that fits a mold. The people who truly see you will never ask you to hide. They will invite your full presence. But they can only do that if you are willing to offer it. And that begins with you accepting yourself, not just the polished parts, but the messy, imperfect, evolving parts. When you stop editing who you are to fit into the world, the right pieces start to find you. And in that, You discover that real belonging doesn't come from the outside in, it begins within. It begins the moment you decide to bring your whole self to the table, no matter who is watching. Most people walk through life with a quiet voice inside them that doubts every move they make. That voice questions their worth, second guesses their decisions, and constantly looks outward for reassurance. Says, am I doing this right? Do they approve? Is this good enough? Over time, they lose the ability to hear their own voice because they've been conditioned to believe that value comes from outside, from praise, from recognition, from applause. But confidence doesn't begin with others validating you. It begins with learning to trust yourself, to validate your own choices, and to stand by them even when no one else understands. Self-trust is not something you're born with. It's a muscle, and like any muscle, it has to be developed. At first, it feels shaky. You question everything. Should I speak up? Should I take the risk? Should I follow my instinct? And that hesitation is natural. We've been taught to look to others for certainty, to wait until someone gives us permission before we act. But that only leads to a life of hesitation, of playing it safe, of holding back. You never fully commit to yourself because you're always looking for signs from the outside that it's okay to move forward. And that dependency keeps you stuck. Building self-trust begins with choosing to act on what feels right to you, not just what looks right to others. It means you stop trying to meet everyone's expectations and start aligning your actions with your own values. And when you do this, something powerful happens. Even if you face criticism, even if people don't get it, even if there's resistance, you feel solid inside, you feel grounded because you're no longer basing your confidence on how others respond. You're basing it on your own clarity. People think confidence means being fearless. It doesn't. Confidence means being willing to move forward even while fear is present. It means trusting that you can handle the outcome no matter what it is. That trust doesn't come from reading books or listening to affirmations. It comes from experience, from deciding to take the leap, feeling uncertain, and doing it anyway. Every time you do that, you build more evidence that you can count on yourself. And slowly your self-trust grows stronger than your need for approval. One of the reasons people struggle with self-trust is because they've spent so much of their lives being judged or corrected. Maybe they grew up in environments where perfection was expected. Maybe they were criticized for expressing their opinions. Maybe they were taught that pleasing others was more important than being true to themselves. So now, as adults, they hesitate, they edit, they doubt. But no matter how long you've lived that way, it's never too late to reconnect with your own voice. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be willing to listen to yourself again. To notice what feels true, what feels wrong, what feels real, and honor that. When you develop self-trust, you stop chasing external validation. You stop needing every move to be approved. You stop over-explaining your choices. You begin to stand in your decisions, not because they're guaranteed to succeed, but because they are yours. And that alone makes them worth it. You begin to take responsibility for your path. You own your wins and you learn from your failures. And you become more resilient because your sense of self is no longer tied to the ever-changing opinions of the world around you. People will always have something to say. Some will support you, others will not. But if you spend your life adjusting based on who claps the loudest or criticizes the most, you'll lose yourself. True confidence is quiet. It's not loud declarations or arrogance. It's a calm certainty that says, oh, I know who I am. I know what matters to me. And I trust myself to figure it out along the way. Self-trust doesn't mean you'll never make mistakes. You will. But it means you'll know how to recover. You'll know how to take responsibility without shame. You'll know how to adapt without losing yourself. And most importantly, you'll stop looking at the world like a mirror, constantly asking, do you see me? Do I matter? Because you'll already know. Confidence rooted in self-trust is not conditional. It's not fragile. It's not for sale. It's built moment by moment, decision by decision, on the foundation of your own integrity. And once you have that, there's no approval in the world that can give you more because you've already given it to yourself. There's an uncomfortable truth that many people try to avoid their whole lives. If you want to do something meaningful, if you want to create, lead, or grow in any direction that matters, you will face discomfort. You will face criticism. You will face judgment. And the sooner you stop trying to avoid those things, the more freedom you'll find in your journey. People often believe they can build a life of significance while remaining liked by everyone. They try to walk a path where they can make bold moves without anyone noticing, without anyone disapproving, without anyone pushing back. But that path doesn't exist. Every time you do something different, every time you raise your voice or challenge the norm or decide to grow beyond where you've been, you will disturb someone's comfort. You will cause someone to question their own choices, and that discomfort will often be aimed at you. Innovation is messy. It challenges the status quo. It threatens people who have become comfortable with how things are. When you bring something new into the world, an idea, a perspective, a piece of work, it doesn't come with a guarantee that people will accept it. In fact, many times they won't. But the goal of innovation isn't approval, it's progress. And progress often looks like disruption at first. The people who create real change don't wait for the world to give them permission. They move even when it's uncomfortable, even when the response is unclear. They understand that resistance is not a stop sign. It's often proof that they're doing something that matters. Leadership works the same way. If your goal as a leader is to be liked, you will make weak decisions. You will avoid necessary conversations. You will prioritize your image over your impact. True leadership requires backbone. It means standing for something, even when it's unpopular. It means making decisions based on principle, not popularity. And that's never easy because leadership exposes you. It puts you in a position where people will disagree with you, question your motives, even attack your character. But the point of leading isn't to be safe. It's to move things forward. And progress rarely comes without pushback. Growth on a personal level is just as uncomfortable. When you start to change, when you start to raise your standards, speak your truth, set boundaries, pursue your goals, some people in your life will not be happy about it. They may feel threatened. They may accuse you of changing in the wrong way. They may say you're selfish, arrogant, or ungrateful. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because your growth reminds them of the ways they've stayed stagnant. And in those moments, you'll have a choice. You shrink yourself to keep others comfortable or keep growing and trust that the right people will rise with you. We've been trained to believe that avoiding discomfort is smart. That staying liked is safe. That being misunderstood means you did something wrong. But that's not the reality for people who make an impact. They are misunderstood. They are criticized. They are doubted. And yet they keep going, not because they don't feel the pain of judgment, but because they've decided that their mission matters more than their reputation, that their voice matters more than their silence, that their contribution matters more than their comfort. You can't create anything great if your priority is to be universally accepted. You can't lead boldly if you're terrified of making someone uncomfortable. You can't grow into your potential if you're constantly bending to avoid conflict. Every step toward meaning will cost you something: approval, comfort, certainty. But it will give you something greater in return: depth, alignment, strength. You won't get applause for every brave choice you make, but you will earn a kind of peace that comes from knowing you were true to yourself, even when it was hard. People who worry about being misunderstood often end up doing nothing at all. They play small. They stay quiet. They suppress their creativity, their leadership, their growth, because they fear being judged. But the judgment is coming either way. If you speak, you'll be judged. If you stay silent, you'll be judged. If you grow, you'll be judged. If you don't, you'll still be judged. The question is not whether you'll be criticized. The question is whether what you're doing is worth it, whether your values, your voice, your growth, and your vision are strong enough to carry you through that discomfort. Greatness always has a cost. And that cost is often discomfort, disapproval, and the willingness to be seen in your full truth, even when it's not easy to digest. You don't get to make a difference and stay hidden. You don't get to grow and stay cozy. And you don't get to lead and stay invisible. If you want a life that matters, you have to stop avoiding discomfort and start building the resilience to move through it. Because the discomfort is not a sign that you're doing it wrong. It's often a sign that you're on the right path. Every day, we're surrounded by opinions. Some are loud and obvious. Others are subtle and wrapped in care. They come from friends, family, coworkers, strangers online. Some arrive with good intentions, others with envy or misunderstanding. The problem isn't that people have opinions. It's that we often give every voice equal weight. We hand over our energy, our confidence, and sometimes even our direction to people who haven't earned the right to shape our path. And without realizing it, we begin living our lives based on a chorus of voices that don't actually know who we are, what we value, or where we're going. Not every opinion deserves your attention. Some feedback can help you grow, make better decisions, or see your blind spots. But a lot of it is noise from people who are projecting their own fears, insecurities, or limited experiences onto you. And if you don't learn to filter those voices, they will drown out your own. You will start doubting your instincts, hesitating on your goals, second guessing your choices. You will begin shaping your actions to please people who don't truly understand the weight of your journey or the purpose behind your steps. That is not clarity. That is confusion disguised as humility. You have to be intentional about who you let influence your thinking. Some people offer feedback, not because they want to help you grow, but because they're uncomfortable with your growth. They criticize not because they see a flaw in your vision, but because your vision reminds them of the risks they didn't take. Their discomfort with your boldness becomes judgment. And if you internalize it, you might start playing smaller just to make others feel safer. But safety is not your job. Your job is to be aligned. Your job is to be real. Your job is to become the fullest version of yourself. And that requires discernment. Reserve your energy for the people who genuinely want to see you grow, even if that growth takes you far from where they are. These people don't need you to shrink to be loved. They're not threatened by your ambition or your confidence. They ask honest questions, not to test you, but to understand you. They challenge you with love, not with cynicism. They don't mock your vulnerability. They respect it. These are the voices that can help sharpen your vision, not distort it. Because they speak not from ego, but from care. Not from insecurity, but from strength. You don't need a crowd of people validating every move you make. You need a handful of grounded, honest, and emotionally mature voices who can offer perspective without projecting fear. The kind of people who don't panic when you take a risk. The kind who won't abandon you when you fail. The kind who don't need you to impress them to feel connected to you. These are the voices that can guide you. Not dictate your choices, but support your clarity. not impose their expectations, but encourage your own values to rise to the surface. Part of growing into yourself is learning to be misunderstood by those who haven't done the work to understand you. That's a quiet pain, but a powerful teacher. Some people will misinterpret your confidence as arrogance, your ambition as recklessness, your boundaries as rejection. And you'll be tempted to explain, to defend, to win their approval. But that cycle only leads to exhaustion. You can't make people see you clearly when they are looking through a lens of their own fear or judgment. And your job is not to adjust your truth until it's comfortable for everyone else. Your job is to stand in it. There's a kind of peace that comes when you stop needing everyone to agree with your path. That peace doesn't come from arrogance. It comes from alignment. It comes from knowing who you are, what matters to you, and who you're becoming. It allows you to listen with openness, but not absorb everything you hear. It allows you to receive feedback without letting it rewrite your direction. It allows you to hold your ground without becoming defensive, because you're not trying to prove yourself. You're just being yourself. The truth is, most of the people who criticize you are not living the life you want. They're not taking the risks you're taking. They're not carrying the vision you're carrying. So why let their opinions carry so much weight? Listen to the people who are in the arena with you, the ones who are showing up, growing, failing, learning. Their insights come from experience, not from the sidelines. And when they speak, it's not just to judge, it's to lift, to refine, to walk with you as you become who you were meant to be. You don't have to ignore every voice, but you do have to be selective. Protect your energy, protect your clarity, protect your vision, because not every voice deserves a seat at your table. And not every opinion is qualified to guide your next step. The moment you stop living under the weight of other people's opinions is the moment you begin to truly live. Every time you choose to be honest over being liked, authentic over accepted, bold over safe, you take a step closer to the life that belongs to you, not the one shaped by expectations, fear, or approval. You were not meant to fit into every room, please every person, or meet every standard set by someone else's insecurities. You were meant to be real, to grow, to lead, to speak, to make mistakes and learn and rise again, guided not by noise but by values. Let people misunderstand you. Let them doubt you. Let them question your choices. Just make sure those choices are yours. Because in the end, the only approval that matters is your own. And when you live in alignment with who you are and what you believe, you won't need the world's applause. You'll already have peace.